Hello, welcome to Random Encounter 304. My name is Jono Logan, and hey, how about that DNC convention, huh? Well, there's no politics here. This is a video game podcast, and as I understand it, there is no room in video games for politics, right?
Absolutely not.
Yep, this is a totally apolitical podcast. We have no agendas at all. So going into our first topic tonight, how the Democrats and their socialist perversions are destroying America. No, because we are not that desperate for ratings. But anyway, and also we're kind of all a little left wing here. So joining me on tonight's episode of Random Encounter are Comrade Izzy.
Hello.
And the Undersecretary for Agriculture and Farm Production and Conservation in the Biden administration, Jerry Williams.
Wow. I love those titles. Comrade, you had me at Comrade.
Yeah. Izzy's title is more impressive than yours. I was literally looking for the longest possible bureaucratic name I could possibly find, and I came up with Secretary for Agriculture, Farm Production and Conservation. I was like, too short. And I was like, in the Biden administration, still too short. Undersecretary of.
Can I be a czar?
You can be a czar. You can be what would you be? The mana czar.
Hey, that sounds cool. I can do that.
Look, they're running out of names. Czar of Mana might be coming up pretty soon.
Why not, right?
Czar of Mana. Gotta stop those elves on the border. Okay, let's talk about that. By the way, okay, seriously, no politics from here on out. Oh, there might be some, but we're going to talk about a video game right now that a lot of people are really excited about, and that is Visions of Mana. So this is the latest entry in the Mana or Second Setsu series. That started off with Final Fantasy Adventures on the Game Boy. Originally, it was a spin-off of the Final Fantasy series, and then it's better known, of course. Probably the best-known Mana game is Secret of Mana for Super Nintendo, which was a beloved game, which, if you don't love that game, it turns out that it can get you into a lot of trouble on Facebook.
Legendary title.
Yes, it is a legendary title, regardless of what you think about it. And that was followed up by Second Setsu 3, which we never got, but it was a very famous fan localization. And that was released a few years ago in the Collection of Mana series. It was finally officially localized into English, and it was great. And then it got a remake, which was a full 3D remake, and the first real Mana game that we had in a few years. There were some other Mana games, Legend of Mana, some other things that were released on various platforms. They never really gained the same level of traction as they had on the Super Nintendo era. But it seems like they're starting to get a little bit more traction now because Trials of Mana eventually did quite well. So they announced Visions of Mana, which is a 3D action RPG. It blends a lot of the classical elements of the series with some modern innovations, and we finally have it. So, Izzy, you reviewed it for the site. You ended up giving it a 87, and I'm curious, what were your initial thoughts when you first saw the trailer for last year, earlier this year? I can't remember when it happened.
I think it was December in 2023. So
yeah, so like last year technically.
Yeah, it's so just seeing that first trailer. There was like the character designs kind of cued me off to it being Mana. Also, side note, Jono, I'm glad to hear that you also flip-flop between Mana and Mana.
I know, and I can't stop myself. I thought it midway through, and I was like, it's because when I was a kid, it was Secret of Mana on this SNES, and then I grew up and was like, no, it's Mana. But it doesn't matter.
I flip-flop between them. It's kind of like data and data to me. Like,
yeah,
please say data.
Data. Anyway,
I'm locked into data. I'm locked into data because of Star Trek TNG. But yes.
Yeah, fair. So that first trailer, it kind of, at first I was like, is this Dragon Quest? And then I was like, no, this is a Mana game. But like, also very shocked that they were actually doing something brand new. Like, there was a bit of me that was like, is this like a remake of somehow, or like some kind of reimagining, or like a Secret of Mana remake? I don't know.
That's what I thought first too. I thought they were doing a Secret of Mana remake.
So then to have it actually, like, as it like opens up and you're like, oh, looks like a big game and it looks unique, and oh, this is a new Mana game, was pretty exciting, and also a little bit like nerve-wracking in that like the series has a bit of there's been a lot of spin-offs that aren't as good. So to
I always feel like Mana is kind of Square Enix. Actually, it can't be Square Enix's answer to Dragon Quest because they own Dragon Quest. It was SquareSoft's aesthetic answer to Dragon Quest.
I get it. It has those vibes. Yeah, it's also kind of like, in a way, to be Mana and Saga always kind of felt like weird stuff happens in these games. Weird in Final Fantasy is nowhere near as weird as what happens in, like, say, Saga or Mana.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. Yeah, it's weird. You know what? I don't even think you said weird. I don't even think Saga deserves to be compared to JD Vance. But anyway, that's how much I dislike JD Vance as a candidate. I'm like, I'd rather play a Saga game.
Good, because I love Saga.
Yeah, curl up on the couch and play a Saga game. Anyway, so the game is obviously has the Mana aesthetic about it. You look at it, and it looks like it has that ethereal quality of a Mana game. It looks like Secret of Mana or Second Setsu 3. But it does have a brand new story, brand new world with all of the same elements of the previous games. So what stands out here in terms of the story?
In terms of the story, so the initial premise is pretty standout in that you're bringing your best friend, your girlfriend, to be sacrificed to keep the world going. The mana tree needs sacrifices or the world ends, basically. Although it's kind of an area, a location thing. So, like, if the from your town doesn't get sacrificed, then your town is screwed. But all the other towns keep going. So
I see.
So through the story, you even go through some towns that have in the past been ruined by the fact that their never made it to the tree for whatever reason. So it's like this weird vibe where in the initial hours, everyone's kind of stoked to sacrifice themselves. Like, this is your sacred duty, and the fact that you were chosen by the fairy to go sacrifice your life and bring mana to the world, like, it's like kind of, this vibe. Your essence is being used to save the world and will be scattered, and it's kind of like almost the you are becoming one with everything and keeping everything going, and you are the, like, protector of the future. So everyone's kind of stoked about it, and it's kind of weird, but also interesting.
That's a really interesting take on it, because generally speaking, Mana is, it's the life force. It's the force, basically, of this universe. And it's usually a kind of a positive thing. But in this particular case, it sounds like based on the fact that you have to sacrifice your girlfriend, it's like it's a slightly antagonistic force.
Are the characters named Tidus and Yuna?
They are not. But it is interesting in that, like, when I was comparing those two, is that's never really treated as a positive thing in Final Fantasy X by the characters.
No, everyone's kind of sad about it.
Everyone's sad about it. They know it has to be done. But in this game, it's like, when she finds out she's chosen, like, Val and Hina, like, hug and spin around, and they're like, awesome, we get to go on an adventure together before you die.
Yeah, that's what a cult will do for you.
Yeah.
You grow up in it, it just becomes accepted. You just know it. It's in your bones. It's just what you do. It's okay. Totally. It's a good thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's like Mana is antagonistic, but also not, in that it's because of this fact that you see it as this good thing, and like, and there's not like really like there's not like some evil church leader that's like forcing this to happen, right? Like,
it's just it's nature.
It's nature. And you learn more stuff about things, and obviously it's a heavy subject that there's much more nuance in it as you go further into the game, but at first it's very like, oh, this is just what happens.
I like that as an opener because it draws your attention, because it's unusual, right? It's not intuitive. Why would you be excited about this? So from my perspective, that would immediately get my interest.
So I want to bring something up that you can decide if this is too spoilery or not, because I didn't want to include in the review because I felt it was a little bit spoilery if I talked about it too much, but I still want to bring something to attention of, like, it's kind of so when it comes to the story, 4 women are fridged in this game. 4.
Christ. That's a lot of women. It's a lot of fridges.
And like the way it plays out and the way you feel about it and like the way it like deals with that is like it uses it as kind of like a here's four different men dealing with loss in four different ways, and most of those are bad, and maybe you shouldn't like try and destroy the world or something, you know, when you are confronted with loss. But and like there's layers there, and it's kind of interesting. And I honestly, the way it plays out makes me feel like it kind of like incidentally came as they were like developing the game and creating the story. Like no one stopped to consider what they had done in the end. Kind of like
I've always felt that fridging as a character motivation has become obviously a cliche. From the for those who don't know, I probably do. It comes from an issue of Green Lantern in the early or late 1990s, the post Death of Superman era, when DC was like revamping their entire line and Hal Jordan was dead and Kyle Rayner came in. And one day he comes home and he finds that a character named Major Force has dismembered, murdered his girlfriend and put her in the fridge. And there's a very infamous panel of him opening the fridge and finding the body. In years following, fridging means a character motivation for male characters when their female counterpart, I guess, is killed in a manner that makes them grieve and angry and usually angsty, and that leads to a very dark storyline. And it's become a cliche since then, obviously. It's because it's known as fridging. It was coined by Gail Simone in 1999. And so that means we've had, over 25 years of women in fridges at this point, motivating characters. Does it work here?
So it's, I have some complicated, like, to start, they could have easily, like, swapped at least one of these pairings to be like the man dies, and it would have fit perfectly in with everything still. So it's kind of like, to me, it just feels like they really wanted to parallel these four men and these four women. So they were like, oh, gender's one way we could parallel them, rather than like thinking about the fact that they were only killing women. And
that's a little awkward.
The
trick about fridging is fridging can, as a story device, can lead to completely legitimate story arcs if it's motivated and it's interesting and it's well written. And because it is obviously, having your partner murdered and stuffed into a fridge is an opportunity for some character development. The problem is that it's so overused as a method of character development, and nothing really new is said about it. And that's the problem. It's just become a hack way of showing that your character is conflicted and giving them motivation for revenge.
I know a lot of Japanese RPGs tend to lean heavily on like mythology or historical context for a lot of their stories. Wonder if they're drawing from something like that, and that's why it's done here like that. Just thinking out loud.
Yeah, there's a lot of women who have been fridged in mythology. I don't know. Iceboxed, ice-hilled. The point is, a lot of women are killed for motivation in mythological stories. I think that's beyond the scope of this podcast to talk about why, but still something that is super interesting. So a lot of fridging in this game as a plot device, which is, I mean, not super unsurprising, but a little disappointing. Let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about the actual look of the game. So, like I said, when I first saw the trailer, Izzy, when you first saw the trailer, the first thought was, oh, is this a remake of Secret of Mana? Because it looks a lot like Secret of Mana in terms of the character designs, in terms of the world design, in terms of everything. Like the main character looks like Randy or Chrono, but just has used a little bit of product.
Actually, that's a fantastic description.
Yeah, it's like you have the same hair, but he's like, just give it a little bit of a twist there. Yeah, that looks good. And the most fabulous get-up I've seen of a male character in a video game in quite some time, with a crop top shirt and like kind of like a hoop skirt sort of thing. It's a look, and it's a good look too.
Straight out Harajuku.
Yeah, exactly. So this is not just in terms of the character design, but also the environments. How do the environments look in this game? Actually, let's just talk about the game's look in general. How does the game look?
I would say that it looks like a Hiro Isono painting, but like in motion. It's which to clarify, he was the concept. I'm not sure if he's concept, but he did the box art for Secret of Mana. He also did, I think, the box art for Trials of Mana, Seiken Densetsu 3. And I think he did some other art for those games as well. I can't remember if he actually did anything in game, but anyway, the concept art or like the box art aesthetic is basically what they went for here, and they actually managed to make it work in like 3D in wide open environments, and it kind of blows my mind. I
would say lush is a good word to describe it.
Yes, lush is a perfect word. It might be one of my favorite games aesthetically, like ever. I don't know. It's gorgeous.
It pops off the screen for sure.
It really does. And I mean, yeah, there's things where like, say, gamey stuff where rivers come out of nowhere or waterfalls stop falling before they hit the river. You know, there's it's not perfect, but like just the general, like when you're looking at the game in motion, it's just like awe-inspiring and just feels really good and cozy and wonderful to be in that world.
Yeah, it looks like, I think a painting, like you said, is a very good analogy. And that because of the lushness of that world, I imagine that it really drives you to want to explore it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I mean there is things to find in the world, but sometimes I would just be like, oh, I bet there's a cool view over there. I'm gonna go there. I don't even care if I find anything there because I want to look from there. And that's not something I've done very often, even in like the big open world games like Skyrim and things like that. That's never really been my vibe with games, but for this game, I couldn't stop doing that.
What's it like to explore the world in terms of like what are your options? Obviously, it's an action RPG and you're running around, so there's no like skipping to different screens. But aside from literally walking and running, what are your other options to explore? Like famously in Secret of Mana, there was the cannon travel to get around.
I was honestly surprised there was no cannon travel here. I was kind of expecting it the whole game, and it just never happened.
Shame, because I think it's one of the funniest damn travel mechanics in gaming history.
Yeah, so you get other than like running around and like you have like you run fast, you could jump high, you could double jump, you can dash. So in the air as many times as you want. So you can really explore super easily and quickly just on foot. But you also get what are they called? Peacools. They're like furry dog wolf things that kind of look like a pangolin at the same time. And those are mounts. They're really great.
You pet them?
You can't really pet them because
that's clearly why you gave it an 87 instead of a 90.
You immediately mount them. So like, and they disappear when you unmount them. So it's not really, unfortunately never a time where they're on screen where you're not like riding them.
That seems like a missed opportunity to just have a couple like in towns and stuff like that where you can give them a pet. That would have made everyone happy.
And you're 100% right. They could have done that. Probably should have done that. I mean, the other thing is they're very fast. So if you want to get from point A to point B, it's helpful. But like they don't have the jump ability. Like they can't like double jump and dash in midair. So if you're like doing 3D exploration, it's often easier on foot. But if you just want to get from point A to point B, they're much faster. There's also lots of fast travel points though. So to me, they do not feel like something you needed in the game and something they just wanted to have more because like it never felt like I was needing the extra speed, but I still would ride them because they're cute.
Is it fun to move around here? Like, is the movement like I know that you can jump around and dash and stuff like that, but is it fun?
I mean, I think it's incredibly fun. Like I feel like a lot of games have made movement realistic in a way that can sometimes be detrimental to fun.
I agree 100%. I never have fun when I'm moving around the real world. I am like, where is my double jump? Where is my dash? This sucks.
Right. And I mean, like, just like climbing and stuff in games, like, it can be fun in its own way, but like, sometimes it's like, why does this game need climbing? Like, why do I want to climb when I could have like cool ways to get up things? So like, in this game, instead of climbing things, I'm like, I can double jump to that little ledge up there and then double jump to that ledge and then I'll double jump up here and then I'm at the top of the cliff. And, or like I can double jump from up on this cliff, then keep dashing and I'll land on top of that platform way over there that I couldn't get from the ground or things like that. And it's just like almost like a platformer vibe that like
okay, cool.
feels really good.
That's really cool. Like I remember when I was playing Tears of the Kingdom, and it really does get in your head. And it wasn't just like seeing Korok puzzles everywhere. It was also my apartment is on the 3rd floor, and I can see my balcony from like the front door of my building. So there's a small part of me that's like, I probably have enough stamina to climb that wall up to my balcony. I could probably do that, yeah. And I could eat if I needed to. I could eat some stamina fruit to get up there. Yeah, that sounds like something that's in the real world. Or just double jump up there, Samus it up. Oh, video games! Why aren't you in the real world? I think that this game looks gorgeous, and it's really good to hear that it navigates well too, because clearly that's an important part of the game. The other important part of an action RPG, though, is the combat, which I imagine the movement, obviously, in an action RPG will carry over to the combat. So how does the combat work here?
So it's fully action, like you have a regular combo and a special combo on, I was playing on PlayStation, so square and triangle. And then you can dash in combat, which has some invincibility frames. And you can jump still in combat, but it's not always particularly useful except to do aerial attacks. Like some things you could dodge with jumping, but often the dash is a more useful dodging tool. But if you're attacking a flying enemy, you need to be able to jump into it and do aerial combos. That has the ring menu, classic mono ring menu. You can open up the ring menu and use items or use abilities, but then you also can put things on shortcuts. And you have so it has a class system. So Trials of Mana had the class system. It had its you unlock classes as you progress in that game, and you go off branches and stuff. But in this one, so there's these elemental vessels you gather. So I think there's 8 elements, so you get one for each element, and equipping one of those on a character gives them a different class. And each character has 3 different weapon types that they can use. So different classes use one of those 3 different weapon types, and then they also have some passive abilities that are specific to them, and each have a linear skill tree. There's no branching or anything, but your abilities you learn on each of those classes can be used on the other classes, except for the passives. So you have this huge amount of different abilities, and as you gain more and more vessels and you gain more and more nodes, even your basic combos get new things, I can hold this button and do a charge attack now, or if I do a slow timing press of this, if I change the timing of my presses, it'll do a different combo, or things like that. And it just kind of keeps branching and branching out into the things you can do with a character. Just every character kind of feels like a toolbox in a way. And then you have 3 characters in any battle, and you can switch between them instantly, and you can use the ring menu to use abilities on any of them at any time. So there's a lot of options there. I only played the game on normal, so only bosses really tended to be hard enough to need to use all the options, but I still always have fun figuring out ways to clear battles as fast as possible and do weird things in battle. So but I imagine if you played on a harder difficulty, you might have more fun even really digging into that toolbox if that's something you're into.
Yeah, the difficulty is always tricky in terms of how to play. If I play a game, I'll never do my initial run on hard. I'll always do it on normal. And then if I do a playthrough again, I will do it on hard just to, vary it up a little bit, give you a slightly different experience. And you're right, sometimes it is more fun.
I'm always going through message boards and asking people, what's the best difficulty? Because sometimes games don't break it down. I love when they give you a description of difficulty. Because a game not having teeth is a bummer for me. And if I need to be playing on hard to get a good chewy experience, then that's what I need to do. It's a coin flip a lot of the time.
Yeah. Difficulty is, not to get political on a podcast.
Oh my God.
But it's become a bit of a football, especially in terms of things like, I don't know, Souls-likes, which we will be talking about in just a few minutes. At least one of them in a few minutes. Besides the fact that you have, so obviously the game, solid combat, solid movement, great environment, interesting characters. Sounds like a home run so far. How does it perform in terms of its? You played it on PS5?
Yeah. So I'm not. I wish I noticed performance as much as other people did in some ways. I'm glad I don't, because it makes it easier for me to play games. But I feel bad when I can't always give people a full this is how it performs. and like this gives you the information you need to know if you want to play it or not. But like, as far as I'm concerned, there was, it sometimes had hitches, especially when there was lots of enemies in a fight. And like there was occasionally like graphical artifacts, and there was like sometimes it would glitch out a bit if you like, because of how free you are to jump and dash everywhere. Sometimes you'd get places you probably shouldn't get, and you see things like, oh, that's an unfinished part of the environment or things like that, But it never like took me out of the game. I know that based on people's impressions of the demo, that on PC the dead zones are kind of messed up for the analog sticks, so like characters like stop on like weirdly and stuff if you push the control stick too far or change it too quickly and things like that, which would be a pain in the ass. But
yeah, but that's
hopefully
something
they fix that
patch pretty quick.
Yeah, hopefully they fix that before launch, even like day one patch, or maybe it won't even be in the final build because that was for the demo. I haven't played the PC version, so I don't know. And I did see online someone just changed some INI files and was able to fix it. So like,
so it could be a real quick fix.
It could be a real quick fix. That's like, if like I didn't notice that at all on the PS5. So if that, like, I could see that being a much bigger problem than any like performance hitches or anything I saw. So I mean, I played it on quality mode the entire time too, and it wasn't like nothing ever like took me out of it as far as performance issues. But like I said, I don't notice those things as much as some people do either. So
yeah, and I mean, the PlayStation 5 is comparatively speaking, it's a powerhouse. Like if you had a lot of performance issues on the PlayStation 5, the game would have something deeply, deeply wrong with it. It's not like you'd be playing this on Switch, which incidentally, it's not even available on Switch.
Yes, that's true. Switch could not. Like it could probably do it, but it would not look. It would be like, because if you think about like Xenoblade or something, kind of, they have the big environments and all this, and they're pretty lush now and things like that. But they also run pretty low resolution and stuff, and so they probably just made the decision that they did not want to deal with the super low resolution, like low frame rate version of the game.
I have a theory that a lot of developers and Nintendo themselves are actually really, really excited for the Switch to the Super Switch, whatever they're eventually going to call it, because it means that games like Visions of Mana, a lot of other games, they're going to get a second bite at the apple, because they're going to be able to say, they're going to be able to say available for the first time on the Nintendo Switch 2, and people will buy it. It'll be a second launch. It'll give them a second burst of sales for some of the games, especially once they slow down. So I don't think that, like, obviously people who only have a Nintendo Switch are a little bit sad right now, but in a few months, fingers crossed, we will have announcements that a new Switch, a new piece of Nintendo hardware is coming out, and then just imagine all of the games from the previous generation that can be played on it. It'll be a revolution.
I mean, this seems like a perfect candidate for that too. Like,
yeah, I mean, Mana, they should be on a Nintendo system.
Agreed.
It's a natural fit in my mind. Okay, so one of the things, and I wholeheartedly agree with you here, that you mentioned at the end of your review, is that there's something magical about playing a brand new Japanese RPG that isn't constrained in its budget or vision in 2024. I utterly agree. And more importantly, I also feel that there could be something magical about playing a Japanese RPG that isn't constrained by nostalgia, so to speak. Like, they are obviously using the graphical aesthetic of the Mana series, but this is a brand new game telling a brand new story. It's not like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Remake, where they are expanding, but they're still beholden to the original. They have a playground they can do anything in, and that's got to be great.
Yeah, there's just such a nice feeling to realize how many like Tales of Arise, like that these old Japanese role-playing series are getting to do big things while still feeling like those series and those games. Like, they aren't trying to chase the Western audience like they were in like the Xbox 360, PS3 generation. They're not they're not like just being destroyed by having to move to HD development and things. Like, these games, and Vision of Mana feels like a perfect example of those kind of games, of like getting something new and fresh and very Japanese in 2024, and I'm all here for it.
Yeah. It's it's nice when a new generation of developers can take on something like this and they can push it forward. That creates the innovation, that creates the next generation, that creates great games. So I'm absolutely delighted that the Mana series is, from all appearances, back. And it looks, I mean, the game isn't on sale yet as of us recording this podcast, but it looks like it's going to be a success. It's gotten some great buzz. You really enjoyed it. So fingers crossed that this hits the way I think it should.
I agree. I really hope so. I want the series to get to keep going. Like, I want it to really be back, not just this one entry and then them being like, it didn't do well enough, you know? Like, yep. I hope that we have a future for the series now.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree. It's just really nice to see a JRPG, hopefully doing as well as everyone on our site anyway feels that JRPGs should do.
Mm-hmm.
And now we love talking about JRPGs, but we're going to pivot now. We're going to be talking about hang on. CRPG is already taken with computer role-playing games. How do we talk about Chinese RPGs? So yeah, we're going to be talking. Thank you very much, Izzy, for coming on and talking about Mana. Jer, you recently reviewed a hotly anticipated game, Black Myth Wukong. And the reason why this was hotly anticipated is, first off, it looked really, really cool. But second off, it was the first Chinese-developed AAA game. It was developed by Game Science, a Chinese studio. And obviously, China is a major player in the video game industry, Epic Games, Tencent, etc. But this was the first like AAA, oh my God, this trailer at Gamescom, trailer at Game Awards, that kind of level of gaming. And a lot of people were, I don't want to say worried, I have to be frank, there's a fair bit of racism and well-deserved criticism of the Chinese government coming off of this thing. But Black Myth is based on Chinese mythology, inspired by the classic novel Journey to the West. It utilized a gameplay style which was reminiscent of a Souls game. It featured combat with a staff weapon with transformation abilities, and it did gangbusters. It really did. It became a commercial success, a critical success, and it reached 2.2 million concurrent players on Steam, which set records for single-player games. It demonstrated a strong interest in Chinese games. Now, a few months ago, we had our episode 300 future draft episode, and one of the predictions in that draft was in the next 4 years, a Chinese developed game is going to be announced as Game of the Year, or at least a Game of the Year contender. And it seems like Black Myth Wukong hasn't quite reached that level, but it's getting close, which means that if this does, there are going to be others following it. So, Jer, you played it. Tell me, how did you enjoy it?
Oh, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, my review, the overall score was a 92.
Yeah.
The only thing that kept me from giving Irish choice was a clunky final chapter that I played, which may have been more just me being me and less about the game itself. But
I don't know about that, Jer, because I mean, I've worked with you for a long time now, and I don't think I've ever gotten a message being like, did they just accidentally leave like a developer beta as the final level, or is something's going on here? Like, you were genuinely confused as to what the hell you were presented with in the end of the game. Based on that, I was like, oh man, this thing is going to get murdered in the score. And then I looked at it, I was like, 92? Yeah. Damn, this thing must be great if the last level was that bad and it still got a 92.
Yeah, it was a weird design decision in the final chapter I played, which may or may not even be the final chapter of the game. Mm-hmm. Because of non-linearity, but it was just the navigating the world and all that. It's very different from the previous part of the game. The previous part of the game is pretty much straight Souls-like. It's third-person camera from behind Wukong's reincarnate, and then you're basically hitting things, moving around, rotating the camera, locking on, as you do in a Souls-like. And then in this final chapter, you still do that stuff, but you're not just walking; you're also doing something else. So. And there's so much, and there's so much to look at, and there's very little that's out there. And I was like trying to find needle in a haystack. I literally wasted hours, but I don't want to hem and haw about the unfortunate last chapter, because the vast majority of the game, which is why I gave it 92, is because gameplay wise, it is fantastic. The music inspired, culturally relevant, beautiful. The voice acting, top notch, at least the English voice acting, some of the Chinese I heard as well. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this checks all the boxes. I'm surprised the Open Critic score wasn't actually higher, because I really do think this is an Excalibur class title in the action RPG genre.
What is the Open Critic score? Let's just check this out right now.
It's like an 81 or something.
It's an 81, which is still a very, very good score.
Yeah.
But yeah, this, generally speaking, it's been very, very well received by most folks.
International acclaim.
International acclaim, which is, to be frank, what they've got to be hoping for. Like this, a AAA game like this was going to make a splash in China. That's their direct audience, but clearly they were aiming for an international audience by bringing Souls-like gameplay into it. Speaking of that, Souls-like is known for its what you could describe as insane difficulty. It doesn't seem like this game is pulling that aspect of Souls-like. It seems like it's a much more balanced difficulty and much more accessible to the average person than, say, Dark Souls.
That's certainly my opinion. I've been watching streams of this game just because I'm not playing it right now. I'm thinking about doing New Game Plus or something, but I want more of this game, so I'm kind of getting that fed to me by watching other people play it. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing a lot of other people struggle, but it's for similar reasons that I've described in like Elden Ring and all. As like people are just like running into a wall, not changing anything, not using all the tools available to them. I was modifying my build on the fly, which is one of the wonderful qualities about this game. Is there's no currency, there's no special item you need to just respec. I actually wish this game had loadouts. So if you've got like various skill trees, lots of different ways to customize your character, and if you're hitting a boss and you do a few attempts and something's not landing, you could change up a spell and use that spell skill tree. You could change up your transformation and do a different skill tree for that transformation. There's so many different ways to play this game that there's almost always going to be an answer to a difficult boss. So in my opinion, it was not a very hard game. I found it extremely accessible, especially the normal enemies. The normal enemies are fodder. You're just like breezing through these guys. A lot of people have described it as a boss rush, and there are a lot of bosses, and I actually think that's a good thing. Not like an objectively good thing, but for this game's style, I think it really fits because it's about big. Everything's big, 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 and you're always trying to do these big, impactful things to get the relics to reincarnate or resurrect Wukong, which is kind of the story of the game. You kind of lose it initially. They kind of just tell you, get the relics, resurrect Wukong, and your character's kind of just doing it because. And then you get fed more about who Wukong really was, and is this a good thing you're doing? And that's why it's called Black Myth, because in Journey to the West, Wukong, attains Buddhahood, which is good. It's peace loving. It's a good thing to do, but this game is kind of putting a twist on that. And I think a lot of people who don't know Journey to the West or the myth of Wukong are going to have blind spots with the game, and they're going to get a little bit lost and not really know what's going on. I have some background knowledge about Wukong and Journey to the West, but I imagine for the vast majority of the player base, which is, Chinese folks, they're going to know this story very well. And that's probably part of the reason why it's so popular, is because it's got a nice, interesting twist on it, where Wukong is not the saint you think he is. And as you play the game, you learn more and more about who Wukong is and how others think about Wukong. And if you're not interested in reading the book, there's lots of lore you can read in the game if you go into the menu, where it gives you a bestiary, and it describes all the different enemies and gives you a little story, like a little myth about that character or that enemy. And there's such a deep and rich story here. It makes me want to read Journey to the West. It makes me want to go back into the game and read all the bestiary stuff, which most of it was in Chinese when I played it because it was before release. So I couldn't read a lot of it. But the ones I did read were well written, well translated, and only made me want to read more about what's going on here.
Yeah. Journey to the West, for those who don't know, it's a 16th century Chinese novel, which is considered to be one of the greatest Chinese novels of all time. It's as I would, from what I have read, it's as iconic to them as like Shakespeare would be to us, and not just because it's 16th century.
Tale of Genji.
Yeah. And it has been adapted many times over the years into different forms. presumably the most popular with this audience would be it was adapted into Dragon Ball. Not entirely, but it was certainly a massive inspiration for the Dragon Ball series. But this is a much more straightforward adaptation of it. And I think it's a super, super smart idea. If you're going to create the first AAA Chinese game, you might as well pick, a piece of iconic literature from that culture to explore and to put out there. The game is obviously gorgeous, like it is, just looking at these screenshots and the thing in motion. And it's a beautiful, beautiful looking game that stars a monkey. I'm not going to lie. The first time I saw this, I honestly thought, are they doing like a 16th century Asian spin-off of Planet of the Apes? And then I was like, oh no, it's something completely different than that. Thank God. But
I think I made one of those jokes in my review. Planet of the Apes joke.
Did, except I want to be there, except you don't, because I've seen Planet of the Apes, and screw that. Yes. Yes. At any point did they blow up the Statue of Liberty? The game is gorgeous. At least I think it is. What do you think of it?
We haven't really seen what a lot of Chinese developers could do. So I was interested in it. I mean, you could just look at a trailer and see like this game's gorgeous, but trailers are one thing. It's another to actually play the game and feel it and interact with it. And, there's no pop in that I could tell. It runs super smoothly and my hardware is about around the recommended level. And I ran the game on high settings. This is a technical marvel. It is so well optimized. It plays so smoothly and it looks great constantly. The detail is exhaustive. You can go anywhere. You can go down this rocky cliff and the path is leading left. And if you just choose to look right down this little nook behind you, there is a painting on the wall that is worn by time. It's faded, it's cracked, and it's got expressive characters in the painting. You have no reason to look right and behind you. The game is telling you go down this ramp and turn left. There's torches over there. Everything is telling you to go left. These developers, these graphic designers, put something to the right where most people probably won't look, and it looks phenomenal. There is something to love everywhere. You can look up. Very rarely is there a reason to look up in a lot of these games. You can look up. There's stuff going on above you. I cannot stop talking about how impressive this game is visually, not just in terms of the graphics and the technical quality, but just the level of detail. If you wanted to, you could just walk around and just look, and it's like you're in a museum. If you've ever been to an art museum and you've seen Asian artifacts, you're going to get that exact same feel in a lot of places here.
Interesting. I have to say that politics into this again.
You can't help it.
Can't help it. One of the things that I guess I feel slightly uncomfortable talking about this, even though it's a completely legitimate topic. One of the biggest issues with Chinese games has been accusations of plagiarism, especially of Western properties, images, graphics, all of this, where a lot of Chinese games up to this point have, shall we say, been heavily inspired by other pieces of media to the point where you're like, that's a one-to-one copy. And that's a completely legitimate thing to point out, because in some cases it's blatant. This has been portrayed as very completely original. Now, that being said, there have been some accusations of plagiarism in the game stemming from appropriating Chinese culture, which makes no sense to me because they're appropriating their own culture. That's just something that everybody does. But
I agree with you.
yeah, exactly. But there's also apparently some examples of art from the internet, character designs, things like that being pulled. However, as a step forward for the Chinese gaming industry, I would say that this one is more than substantial in terms of its originality and giving people a completely original and not plagiarized experience, which bodes very well for the future, I think.
Yeah. I mean, if this is what a Chinese developer can do with a big budget, give me more, please. I can't speak to the accusations you're saying. This is the first I'm hearing it, and I don't know if they stole anything or not. But what I am going to say is me being ignorant and going into this, this looks incredibly impressive. I think the vast majority of people playing it are going to, think the same thing. Like, wow, just wow. If I were to criticize, the exploration is a little difficult in this game because the maps are so vast and you are rewarded for exploring. But it's a little you can easily get lost in this game because there's not enough landmarks, which is difficult for me to even say because the game is beautifully developed. I don't feel like anything really here is copy pasted, but it's hard to go back to an old area and be like, wait, okay, where did I go again? And which way did I not go? And like, did I look everywhere here? Because it's just so vast. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you're in a desert, it looks like a desert. And they didn't put a lot of things in the desert environment to be like, okay, there's that like purple statue over there. I know exactly where I am right now. There's none of that, which, from a gameplay perspective, I think you could criticize it. But from like a au naturel, like this is kind of what a desert looks like perspective, I think they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I would imagine. It would be nice to have a couple more landmarks, or to use a phrase pulled from the Disney parks, weenies, to attract your attention. You know that one?
No, I don't. That's the first time hearing it, but I know where you're going with it.
Walt Disney used to refer to tall attractions as weenies. That would, for example, like Cinderella's Castle would be a weenie because it would be the kind of thing that you are drawn to. And when he was designing the parks, what he would do is he would be very, very strategic about setting up weenies at various points in order to subtly direct pedestrian traffic around the park. So if he could draw attention to these various things, then people would head towards these various things, and it would keep crowds moving among the.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was brilliant, and it's been the concept of weenies has been used in everything since then.
I feel like Elden Ring kind of does that.
Oh yeah, most open world games have to do that because you're just dropped into a massive world, and you really. Breath of the Wild is another perfect example. Like the iconic screenshot as soon as you leave the Cave of Resurrection and you reach the cliff and you look out upon Hyrule and you're like, okay, hey, look at that mountain over there. And look, oh, there's the castle. And okay, and like you see this and you're like, those are weenies. You're instantly drawn to those and you got to head to them. So it sounds like they need a little bit more experience with placing weenies in the environment to create gameplay flow. But that's not necessarily, it sounds like they almost went for more realism of environments than they did gamified environments.
I mean, it's a decision, right? I mean, maybe one is not necessarily better than the other. It's just, what do you want to do with your game? It's a hard thing to decide. But regardless, when I was nearing the end, I knew I was nearing the end. I knew there were some places I wanted to go back to. And I was inspired to do so. So despite the fact that it was a little difficult and I got a little bit lost at times, the fact that I still tried is to the game's credit because I wanted to do it. I was choosing to do it. And I was up against an embargo. So it was like, I know I got to beat the game, but I really want to explore and find some secrets. So, kudos to them.
Yeah. I think this game is a perfect example of why RPG fan policy for reviewers that you need to complete the game is a very good idea because, like Jer, you ran headlong into a confusing and disappointing final chapter that certainly influenced your review. And I feel like a lot of people who play half of the game and think, I got the gist of it, and then write the review are going to miss that and theoretically give it a more positive review than necessarily, I don't want to say the word deserves because this game clearly deserves all of the accolades that it's been given. But I feel like you need a complete experience in order to give a informed opinion about it.
Yeah. And I do like our policy. And this is one example, a very good example of why you should beat the game, because they really changed things up in this last chapter I played. But I
got to say, I don't, well, I appreciate it. And I am, because I'm the review manager, enforcing it. I don't necessarily like the policy because there have been times where it's like, oh my God, I have to get through this game in 2 weeks. How the hell am I going to do that?
Yeah, no, and it's bad when you're like, oh, I think this game is going to be decent, and then it's not. And I've played my fair share of those games. I'm just like, I hate this. And you muscle through it. You get a podcast going or something to distract you from the pain of the game.
And that ends up being 60 hours long, too.
Oh, God, I don't even want to think about that.
Yeah, that is a possibility. which thankfully this game was not. It also feels, and I mean, again, it's Chinese, but one of the things that I've noticed about trailers and from what your review and what I've heard about it, it feels remarkably authentic in terms of the representation that's presented in the game in a way that a lot of JRPGs, for example, that are set in Japan. I don't want to compare it to Yakuza because I compare everything to Yakuza, but like Yakuza is clearly created by people who are living within it's a Japanese simulator. This is not a China simulator, but it feels equally authentic to the culture.
Yeah. My impression is my wife's from Singapore, and she's Chinese. So her impression is that pretty much everyone in China who is Chinese knows this story. It's kind of like just known. Yeah, Journey to the West. It's one of the 4 great novels of China.
Probably taught to school kids.
Yeah. So like it has to be authentic. And I think if you're a Chinese developer working on this, you have it within you. Like, we got to do this right. And it certainly doesn't. And it's not just authentic visually or in terms of, their twist on the plot, but also musically. Like, you got these Buddhist chants that sound so much just like sitting in a temple in Asia, where I've been to Japan many times, and you go into some of these temples and you hear the Buddhist monks chanting. It sounds exactly like that, and it's woven into the exploration very tastefully. The instrumentation is very traditionally Chinese. If you want to get an insight into traditional Chinese culture, whether it's the aesthetics or the music or the sounds or even the imagination and how they decide to animate this world and the grandiose tortoises that are displayed in this game, I think this is a fantastic introduction, and I think it will make many people, myself included, want to learn more about this story and this world. And games are great. You pick up a game, you start playing it, you finish the game, and you move on to the next game. Few games make me want to learn more about a thing. And this game did that. So it's more than just a game, in my opinion. It is a cultural representation that can broaden your world.
I think this is a good point to pivot to a discussion question. Usually I give the discussion questions ahead of time. However, this, I didn't have one in mind. I was just going to skip it, but I think this would be an interesting thing to talk about. China obviously is a world power, and one of the ways that the United States became a world power and became known as the hope, the shining city on the hill, whatever political description you want to give it, was through soft power. In the case of the United States, it was through television, movies, and music. And while a lot of other Asian countries, Japan, Korea especially, has had remarkable success in the last few years with soft power, with K-pop, with television dramas, things like that, China has had just about no success with soft power through their music, through their television, or through their films. However, they have with video games. This is a massive thing. And the video game industry in China it's friggin' weird. The restrictions they put on how long you can play, especially if you're a kid, and like it's awkward. But clearly they don't have any problem with giving this slightly addictive games to a Western audience. I'm just curious what your thoughts, Izzy and Jer, on your thoughts about this as a means of soft power. I feel like China has a real opening here to get into the media landscape of Western audiences in a way they have not been able to with any other form of media. This is clearly the first AAA game, but I mean, Genshin Impact is beloved by a lot of people who play video games. I mean, opinions may vary, but you cannot deny that it is a gorgeous looking game that is pulling from various other properties, among them Breath of the Wild, that sort of thing. What do you think the future holds for this kind of soft power? Because there's no chance in hell the CCP is not friggin' thrilled at the reception this game has gotten.
I think the bring up Genshin Impact specifically, and like MiHoYo, is they almost feel like a platform of their own now. Like, they have 3 big games now, and plus mobile stuff, but like 3 big games that are on everything. And like, it feels like that over time, you're just going to get to a place where that company almost is like a console manufacturer, like they're a Nintendo or something. Kids play only their games. They have a big slate of games that like give you a different vibe for what you want. Like I see that studio, that company in specific, taking over the world basically in the long run. They already kind of have.
Yeah.
I'm all for broadening people's world to culture. The fact that something like Black Myth Wukong is based on a novel, I mean, this is a giant cultural icon in our world.
Oh yeah.
Just viewing China as part of the world. I celebrate it. I think it's fantastic. I don't really view this in the context of like, what is this going to do for China? I view this as, how is this going to benefit consumers who were ignorant about this beautiful and rich culture and can learn more about it?
I agree with you, Jer. I think that the concept of soft power has been talked about endlessly, certainly throughout the 20th century, and into the 21st, obviously. At a time when God knows what's going to happen in the next few months, but at a time when things like imports from China will be under a great deal more scrutiny, perhaps. I don't have a problem with this kind of soft power because it's not, I just don't care. Like the game's not, if a piece of actual propaganda ever was released and it hit the mainstream, I would be a little bit disturbed, but I can't see that ever happening. I think that audiences, especially gaming audiences, are a little bit more savvy than that. This is just a damn good looking game. It's a damn good playing game. And it's one that deserves the same amount of attention and appreciation as anything that would come out of any other Asian country, Korea or Japan. I mean, JRPGs is the bread and butter, and Chinese RPGs should be treated with the same, Chinese games should be treated with the same recognition as anything else.
I think a lot of time people have trouble sparsing, Chinese government and Chinese people and even Chinese history. Mm-hmm. Like the government, you can absolutely be critical of the government. You got good reason to be critical of the government, but like there's a whole country of people who are just living their lives, who are enjoying their culture, their rich history. And if this game is, giving you insight into Chinese history and what inspires Chinese people and makes them happy, and something that can make all of us happy, there's only celebration here from my perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to be frank, big games in China sometimes don't make it to the mainstream. I mean, one of the biggest MOBA in China is a game called Honor of Kings. And it is apparently an extremely, extremely well-made MOBA that obviously pulls from League of Legends and other MOBAs, but it hasn't really hit the mainstream here in a way that arguably its quality would make you expect. It's funny what catches the public imagination. You never can really guess what is going to get some traction, but I am very glad that this game, it looks like it's gotten some traction because it looks like a damn.
It's a win for all of us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can't disagree with that.
A question, one Canadian to another.
Yeah.
Where is our Anne of Green Gables action RPG AAA budget?
Dude, you just got to make it. Waiting on you, dude.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, you could make it into PEI is one of the most gorgeous provinces ever. Basically, you could just create a 1-to-1 PEI and it would just be like exploring Hyrule. Just replace rupees with potatoes and that would be perfect.
Perfect.
Yep, that would be great. So Anne picks up a rock and she finds a potato. Basically, PEI operates on a potato-based economy. You want to know what's actually hilariously funny? This is not an insult to PEI, by the way, because I adore PEI. So much of PEI's tourist economy is based around Anne of Green Gables. I'm not entirely certain that you could have an accurate representation of PEI where Anne actually exists as the main character, because like the culture would be missing a key component in it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Without her, basically, you have red soil, potatoes, and cow ice cream. And cow's ice cream. That's what you'd have, and a ferry that a ferry that crosses to my hometown. Actually, yeah, I'm going to PEI in about a little over a month to see a production of Jersey Boys at the Charlottetown Festival, where a very good friend of mine is playing Frankie Valli. So I'm super excited about that. And for any Americans out there who are looking for a beautiful, beautiful province to visit, PEI is holy crap, gorgeous, unbelievable. Although I do agree with you, Izzy, it's a little bit annoying that apparently one of the best Anne adaptations is a Japanese anime. Come on, Canada, step up.
Right?
Yep, action RPG starring Anne.
It's going to end up like the Alice games or something, all creepy and dark and weird.
Yes, it probably would, especially if there wasn't a Canadian developer working on it.
Yeah.
God damn, I like that idea. I like that idea a lot. That would be fun. That'd be fun. Especially, you don't even make it an action RPG. Make it a JRPG style, and like have Canadian icons or Canadian literature icons be members that can join the party. That would be interesting.
Now you're cooking.
Now I'm cooking. Now we're talking. Now we're making a game. We're making our own Canadian. We're making a CRPG is what we're making.
Perfect.
Oh God. Well, if you'd like if you would like to find a way to support us here at RPG Fan, we cover all RPGs, C or not. We've opened up a store. You can find it at www.rpgfan.com/shop. We have so many things on sale, mugs, clothes, all kinds of things. Check that out. We also have our collaboration with Hyperplay RPG, the RPG Fan review card collection. It's a showcase of over 300 of our review cards, as you can see on our social medias. Highly recommend checking it out. It's a gorgeous book and just a really cool way to check out some really neat games. Another way that you can support us is by checking out our past episodes of Random Encounter. Last week, I chatted with Abe about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate, and I got a chance to talk about two of my favorite characters in video games, Sam and Max, in the remaster of Sam and Max: The Devil's Playhouse. That's the third season of the Telltale adventure game series, and it's a really, really good remaster. We also have two other podcasts here at RPG Fan. We have Retro Encounter. Last week, they were chatting about Dragon Age Inquisition, a conversation that continues into next week. So I know a lot of people out there are getting real excited for Dragon Age: The Veilguard. So this would be a great way to get your excitement meter going up a little bit more. We also have Rhythm Encounter, which is RPG Fan's music podcast. Last week, they were chatting about the best PSP RPG music. And then next week, the theme is going to be absurd, funny, or strange song titles. So that's going to give you a nice variety of music across a vast array of, I suspect, games and generations. If you'd like to get in contact with us here at Random Encounter, you can fire me off a message at podcast@rpgfan.com. If you have any ideas for suggestions, discussion questions, those are always helpful. Please fire me off a message. And if you'd like to send me an email directly, you can do so at jlogan@rpgfan.com, or you can also find me on Mastodon at jonologan@mastodon.social. Izzy, where can we find you online?
I still avoid social media and plan to forever, I think.
Art person.
But
I celebrate you.
But you can find my writing I've done for RPG Fan on RPG Fan, obviously.
Of course.
And, if you get in touch with RPG Fan, things might be passed along to me if you have something to say about one of my reviews or something. So
cool. And Jer, where can we find you online?
Bob@rpgfan.com.
That's confusing.
Don't overthink it.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends. Help us get the word out there. And you can rate us on iTunes or your other podcast players of choice. Izzy, Jer, I really want to thank you for joining me today. We're actually recording a little bit earlier than usual because I'm going on vacation later this week. So I need to get the episode all set up. So I appreciate you giving me your weekend afternoon.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it was fun. It's always fun.
It was fun. Today's episode was loaded with political goodies for you out there. Yeah, that was more political than we usually get, but actually it was kind of fun. Okay. Well, and everyone out there, thank you for joining us and dealing with our ridiculousness. And everyone listening, whatever you're playing, have fun.